Now zoom out even further, because this isn't actually about Bari Weiss as a person. She's not perfect. She's wrong on things. I disagree with her on Israel. I think she said dumb stuff in the past. That's normal. That's being human. Nobody serious thinks people are either saints or demons unless they're living entirely online. What matters is outcomes. And the outcome right now is that CBS News is acting like a news organization again. They're reporting fraud cases. They're acknowledging uncomfortable facts. They're covering issues activist media avoided for years. They're refusing enforced language mandates. They're debating wording internally like journalists always have. And they're saying, we're going to speak plainly because our audience understands plain English. That alone is enough to trigger a newsroom meltdown because activists don't want clarity. They want control. The transgender language email controversy proves it. Journalists have always debated language. Always. That's not oppression. That's literally the job. But activists don't want debate. They want enforcement. They want ideological style guides. They want language to do political work for them. CBS said no, and suddenly that's framed as cruelty, because apparently speaking like a normal human is violence now. This is the real shift happening. Activist journalists are losing narrative dominance, and they hate it. They don't want neutral arbiters. They want allies. They want newsrooms to function like advocacy organizations. And CBS is saying, we're done with that. That's why you're seeing panic headlines about chaos, embarrassment, and internal revolt. It's not chaos. It's withdrawal symptoms. The media spent years driving away normal viewers by obsessing over Trump nonstop while ignoring real-world events. Riots overseas, natural disasters, economic instability. Turn on CNN, it's Trump panels. Turn on Fox, at least they're covering what's happening. People noticed. People left. And now CBS is trying to win them back by doing something radical. Reporting events instead of lecturing audiences. And yeah, that probably explains the money. Because fixing a broken institution is hard. Because attaching your name to a decaying brand is risky. Because walking into a newsroom full of ideologues and saying, "This is changing," takes leverage. That's what the money buys. Control, editorial authority, the ability to say no. And that's why people are so angry. Because the activist era of corporate media is being rolled back, not with a revolution, but with boring professionalism. And here's the part people really don't like hearing. If 70% of the coverage is solid and 30% deserves criticism, that's a win. That's better than 90% spin and 10% truth. That's how real institutions recover. You take the good, you criticize the bad. You don't burn everything down because it's not ideologically pure enough. That mindset is how trust gets rebuilt. And trust is the thing corporate media destroyed the fastest. So when you see journalists screaming about neutrality, understand what they're actually saying. They're saying they don't want audiences thinking for themselves. They don't want people hearing competing claims. They don't want journalism. They want compliance. And that's why this matters. Not because CBS is perfect, not because Bari Weiss is flawless, but because for the first time in a long time, a major network is acting like its job is to inform adults instead of emotionally manipulate them. And watching the activist class panic as that power slips away? Yeah, You really, really love to see it. This way down and really look at what's happening, because the reaction to CBS right now is doing more storytelling than the coverage itself ever did. Barry Weiss takes over CBS News, and suddenly the same journalists who spent years telling you they were neutral arbiters of truth are publicly panicking, not disagreeing, not debating facts, panicking. And that's not because CBS is lying, it's because CBS stopped playing the activist game. For the first time in a long time, they're just reporting what happened without wrapping it in moral panic, ideological enforcement, or narrative scaffolding. And that alone is enough to expose how broken things were before, which is honestly impressive considering how low the bar already was. Now, before anyone twists this into hero worship, let's get something straight. I've criticized Barry Weiss plenty. I've questioned her worldview, I've said some of her past takes were bad, cringe, or straight up uninformed. I still think the $150 million valuation for free press raises serious questions. None of that magically disappears. But here's the thing adults understand that online politics forgot. People can be wrong about some things and still do something right. And right now, CBS News is doing better journalism than it has in years. The January 6th clip is the clearest possible example. 17 seconds, no adjectives, no loaded language, no "this is the most dangerous moment since the Civil War" energy. The anchor literally said Trump accused Democrats of failing to prevent the attack, and Democrats accused Trump of whitewashing it. End of segment. That's it. That's the entire offense. And watching journalists scream both sidesing January 6th over that is honestly embarrassing. Because that's not both sidesing. That's reporting two claims that exist in reality. And the reason they're mad isn't because CBS got something wrong. It's because CBS refused to perform outrage on command. For the last decade, corporate media stopped telling people what happened and started telling people what conclusions they were allowed to reach. Everything became mission-driven storytelling, rage-bait headlines, emotional framing, selective omission, activism disguised as journalism. I watched it happen from the inside. I watched newsrooms shift from "here's what happened" to "here's how to feel." I watched editors refuse to quote Trump because he lies, not fact-checking him, not contextualizing him, just hiding information. And once you do that, you're not informing the public anymore. You're curating reality. We even got flagged as fake news once for quoting Trump verbatim. No opinion, no commentary, just "Trump said this." And the response was, "Why didn't you fact-check him?" Because reporting that a statement was made is not the same thing as endorsing the statement. That distinction used to matter. Apparently now it's considered dangerous, and that's why CBS simply saying "Trump said X, Democrats said Y" broke people's brains. It exposed how far the industry drifted from its original purpose. The same thing happened with the Marco Rubio segment. It was barely positive. It was neutral with light humor, talked about his resume, mentioned memes, called him the ultimate Florida man. On a scale from -10 to +10, it was maybe a 1. And the activist journalists lost their minds because the rule now is simple. Conservatives must always be framed as villains. You cannot acknowledge competence. You cannot joke. You cannot be neutral. You must hate them constantly. And that's not journalism. That's propaganda with better lighting. CBS isn't even being pro-Trump or pro-Rubio. They're just refusing to be activists. And that's the unforgivable sin. When CBS reported on January 6th without emotional manipulation, it shattered the illusion that activist framing is necessary. It showed people what news looks like when it's boring, factual, and short. And that's why the reaction was so extreme. Because if audiences realize this is possible, the activist model collapses. And the panic you're seeing right now isn't moral outrage, it's fear. Fear that people might realize they were being emotionally managed instead of informed. Fear that neutrality isn't dangerous. Fear that audiences don't. And before you bounce, real quick, if you made it this far, you already know why this matters. So if you want more breakdowns like this, more long-form, no BS conversations that actually respect your intelligence, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who's tired of being talked down to. That's how this stuff keeps getting made. No algorithms, no narratives, just people choosing what they want to hear. Appreciate you being here. I'll see you in the next one.